Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we got a lot of stuff going on, so I'm going to jump right into it. Recently, stock markets around the world basically plummeted really aggressively. We saw a massive jump in the yen and in the bond markets, and I wanted to talk quickly about what's going on, where I sit with it, and sort of my thoughts on the subject. Now, please remember, these are just my opinions. I'm not telling you to go buy or sell anything. I'm just sharing my thoughts and my reaction to everything that's going on. So let's get right into it. The first thing I wanted to talk about is a market that we don't often talk about, which is actually the bonds market, which has seen a really dramatic increase overall. A lot of people buying into the bonds market. We see this in the 10-year decreasing quite a bit as people are moving into bonds. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us that there's a little bit of concern around risk on markets, meaning that people are moving into bonds to sort of hedge or hide away from some of the risks that come with individual stocks, high risk currency pairs, things like that. So what does this tell us as currency traders or as just traders in general? Well, there are some trade setups that I think are forming. But first, why is everything going the way it's going? Like what's basically going on? Well, we saw the dollar take a big dip after the Fed basically had their meeting minutes on Wednesday of this week. And they basically said, hey, we're seeing progress, but we're not seeing substantial progress, which is kind of a mixed, weird thing to hear. But at first, it sounds like not too much. But then markets sort of started to factor it in and really started to sell all of the risk on environment situations, like high risk currencies like the Australian dollar, the Canadian dollar, the New Zealand dollar, and then also individual stocks took a big dip, especially ones that were really set to thrive in an optimistic environment, things like Boeing and Nike, Delta, stuff like that, right? So we're seeing a lot of sell-off on risky investments around the world right now, and one of the big leading the way markets was actually the Japanese stock market. So I wanted to pull this up as well. You can check out, here's the Japanese stock market on a 4-hour chart. You can see a dramatic sell-off going on right now. And I wanted to talk about some trade setups here going into this. Now, I think from a risk to reward perspective, you may be seeing some levels that could be coming into play that give us some decent setups on the long side. Now, again, like I said before, these are just my opinions. These are just my thoughts. But I think that there may be some opportunities on some of the different indices that are pulling back right now. And I'm going to talk about currencies as well in just a moment. The S&P 500 here is pulling back pretty aggressively. You've got a pullback here just shy of the 38.2. So you can see it is coming down a little bit here. We got a little bit of a ways, but you may see a little bit of rejection here from buyers. Now, the reason is a lot of times you get something like this from the Fed, and it is really just a temporary scare that gets sort of brushed over in the next week once they see negative reactions to it. The Fed wants economic recovery. They don't want to destroy the markets or anything like that. They would prefer to see markets rising and economic, monetary policy to be improving and looking positive, right? So they don't want it to dip. It's just that sometimes they come out with stuff that tends to make the markets move around. So again, the Asian stock markets sold off. The U.S. stock markets followed suit. And now the question is there a dip to be bought here, or is it just going to continue lower? Now, of course, I could be wrong about this, but I think that the risk to reward is pretty decent looking into some of the risk on biased setups, things like buying the Aussie dollar, the New Zealand dollar, the S&P 500. But I'm going to be cautious with it because, again, this is some aggressive selling that we are seeing coming into the market. We can take a look at things like Aussie dollar, which has sold off dramatically. You can take a look at pound dollar, also selling off pretty drastically. You've got Euro USD, which is rallying in response to this. You saw some strength come in just recently here off of the lows. And then you've got things like USD JPY, which has been taking a severe beating here off of the highs. Now, this is a really big, interesting point that I want to talk about, which is the yen. So the JXY here, this is the Japanese stock market, Japanese currency index. And so this has been jumped up here dramatically. Now, I would watch that. I do like one scenario where I could really see a great setup on the risk on favored side, which would be selling things like the Japanese yen, which is considered a safe haven investment for traders. That being watching for the gap here to potentially start to fill. Because if this starts to reverse, it could dramatically drop right on back down to where we were previously. Now, of course, I could be completely wrong about these thoughts, but these are just setups in which I can see the best sort of risk to reward for my own style of trading. So With that said, I do have a JPY bearish thesis. If we can get some good setups, I'd like to see some strength on some of the ones out there. The big one that I pointed out was USD JPY, which may be due for a bounce somewhere here. You've got levels here on the chart like this one here at, what is that, 109.37 might be a place to look for a bounce. We're also testing one right now. Well, it actually looks like we're trying to break through to the downside there. But again, just watching some of these pullback levels for potential long side action here. We did sell off quite quickly, and I would imagine that if there are buyers, they should look to get strong somewhere in these pullback zones. Of course, like I said, if I'm wrong about that, then I would look to stop out quickly and just move on to other setups. Breaking this trend line was a big deal, and so that was something to watch. Let's talk about gold as well, just because gold selling off really hard in response to this right now. Which gold is very, very confusing right now. You've got price coming up, which you would kind of expect gold to do well since it is a risk-off biased currency, meaning, or not currency, but thing to invest in. People tend to buy gold when it's scary out there. So we're seeing some weird price action today. So watching for gold to, if you think that risk-off is set to continue, there may be some setups like this where you break out higher, you continue up. But again, the overall idea here with the risk-off sentiment is watch what the Fed has to say. That's the biggest thing for me. I don't know what the future is going to hold. Like I said, these are some setups that I see potential in. I do like some of the yen crosses, like I mentioned, but watch for the Fed to either come in and back this up, or if they don't help, maybe even look to go risk off for a little while. That might be something that I could see myself going for here. So you do have these levels of support. All of them got absolutely annihilated here. In fact, we got to mark these as supply now. So maybe, there could be some short-term sell pressure here, but longer term, I am still risk on biased on a lot of the different currencies out there, meaning I am looking to buy things against the yen, mostly like the New Zealand, the CAD, things like that. We could pop up the CAD yen as well, really taking a dip. So there could be some good dip buying opportunities, but I would just say be cautious, wait for some sort of confirmation, and before you take any trade, please make sure that you have a trading plan in place. You know what your risk management and tolerance of risk is, and you don't go risking the whole farm on any trade. So thank you very much for watching today's video. I hope that was helpful to those of you guys who are a little bit confused as to everything that's going on today. And we will be back soon with more videos.